Hi, I'm Peter Connors, publisher of BOA Editions, and I want to welcome you to the BOA is Here virtual poetry salon. We're going to have readings and some chats and maybe even a book signing virtually by some new BOA authors who were planning to do readings and signings and so forth at AWP Festival and quite frankly all around the country for their books release, and obviously are unable to do that. So we're hoping to offer you at least a piece of that experience in the hopes that you'll be able to see them in person before too long and get your book signed. They're all brilliant books that we're so happy to have published at BOA Editions. So without further ado, we're going to have readings from Diana Marie Delgado, Tracing the Horse, Deborah Paredez, Year of the Dog, Matt Morton, Improvisation Without Accompaniment, Rick Bursky, Let's Become a Ghost Story, Kathryn Nuernberger Rue, John Gallaher, Brand New Spacesuit, and Jillian Weise, Cyborg Detective. We hope that you'll enjoy this small sampling of BOA authors, and we hope to be able to bring you more of this in the future. Please check BOA's social media to find out what's going on and where our authors will be doing events in the future or online. Many of them are doing online events at other places as well. I hope you'll also take a minute to check out our current Kickstarter campaign in support of the publication of Lucille Clifton's selected poems, How to Carry Water, edited by Aracelis Girmay. It's a fantastic book, and we are currently running a Kickstarter campaign in support of it, so please check that out. BOA is here, we are with you, and we hope to see you all soon.
Hi, I'm Diana Marie Delgado, and I'm going to be reading two poems from my book, Tracing the Horse. Tracing the Horse is number 43 in the New Poets of America series put out by BOA Editions. So these two poems that I'm going to be reading are part of the second section, and the book is comprised of 3 sections, and it's probably good to know that the book is about my experiences growing up Chicana in Southern California, primarily in the town of La Puente. Prayer for what's in me to finally come out. I want to smoke weed on Easter and walk with cousins of P Hill and passing 7-Eleven, look into the sweet and smoky houses of the middle class and think you never know. I want to fade in the doorway of the house I grew up in, understand why the light in my dad's body after the needles tucked in is orange on a river so silver I can barely see him. I want to wear a yellow sundress in the hallway of a rented house holding what I meant to send you the summer I bought my first car and YA shaved my brother's head, replacing his name with a number. I want to walk P Hill before my brother was shot, and the neighbors carried him in on a dining room chair to lay him on my mother's bed, where later waking he yelled, "Mom, bring me my pills." The next poem I'm about to read is a prose poem, and the book is heavily punctuated with prose poems, and that was something that came toward the latter part of me writing Tracing the Horse, where I began to rely a lot on the prose poem's ability to not only carry the narrative forward, but also to carry the mystery that I was trying to build around my family. The kind of light I give off isn't going to last. There should be somewhere to put the heart when it dies. If only I could hear you opening again a flower. But nothing is ever real. Everything dies. The heart of a woman shuts so tight when pierced it waters. I was jealous his girlfriend had horses, and what girl doesn't want to come home and ride horses? The wind said you'd fly back, but men grow damage from cutting vines that blossom in the dark. I know what you want, a burial inside me. Have you ever opened an apricot still warm from the sun and found worms? Thank you.
My name is Deborah Paredez, and I'll be reading a couple of poems from my new book from BOA called Year of the Dog. It's a book that in many ways is about documenting disaster and how the voices of many women have done that over time, and how I was seeking to do that in relation to the range of disasters we've faced, certainly during my lifetime, since the Year of the Dog, 1970, when I was born, but also of my father's time in the Vietnam War. And so it draws from a range of photographs and documents taken during that era and from his own photographs, and is, I think, really interested in what it means to be the voice of a woman documenting disaster and its aftermaths, which I wasn't anticipating being so resonant in the moment in which it would be released. But here we are. I'll read a couple of poems. The first poem I'll read is actually a poem that is written after the photograph, the very famous photograph taken at Kent State University on May 4th, 1970. We're coming upon the 50th anniversary of that famous photograph. I'm sure everyone can summon it in their minds, a photograph by John Philo of Marianne Vecchio crying over the body of Jeffrey Miller. And so in honor of them and that moment, I'll read the poem called Year of the Dog, Synonyms for Aperture, Kent State University, May 4th, 1970. Marianne Vecchio is down on her knees. Jeffrey Miller's body is face down beside her. John Philo presses his finger down and the aperture shudders. There are 4 down when the shooting stops. Marianne's arms are outstretched, a stripped mast. John is running out of film. Snowy blossoms shroud the dogwoods outside the frame. This girl came up and knelt over the body and let out a god-awful scream, John will say. That made me click the camera. Marianne is a 14-year-old runaway. Later she'll say, I hitchhiked my way into history. And later, it really destroyed my life. There will be a song about 4 dead in Ohio. Oh, hi, oh, I, oh, oh, oh. The bullet enters Jeffrey's opened mouth and comes out the other side. Marianne's mouth is open, an obliterated star. Synonyms for aperture: mouth, gap, cleft, chasm, hole, rupture, perforated passage, eye. In Spanish images of the Pietà, the Virgin often holds out one hand or the other. Marianne will get hate mail. Mary, you dirty tramp, it's too bad it wasn't you that was shot. Or another, you hippie communist bitch, did you enjoy sleeping with all those dope fiends and Negroes when you were there in Ohio? Marianne's mother will say, can you imagine her looking at that? It's a villanelle, kind of a retelling of the story of Lot's wife, which seems sadly appropriate in this moment. Wife's Disaster Manual. When the forsaken city starts to burn, after the men and children have fled, stand still, silent as prey, and slowly turn back. Behold the curse. Stay and mourn the collapsing doorways, the unbroken bread in the forsaken city starting to burn. Don't flinch. Don't join in. Resist the righteous scurry, and instead stand still, silent as prey. Slowly turn your thoughts away from escape. The iron gates unlatched, the responsibilities shed. When the forsaken city starts to burn, surrender to your calling. Show concern for those who remain. Come to a dead standstill. Silent as prey, slowly turn into something essential. Learn the names of the fallen. Refuse to run ahead when the forsaken city starts to burn. Stand still and silent. Pray. Return. Thanks.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Morton, and I'm coming to you from Dallas, Texas, and I'm excited to read a couple poems to you from my first book of poetry, Improvisation Without Accompaniment, which was recently released from BOA Editions. And the first poem I'm going to read is called The View from Here. What to make of the ridged aluminum awning behind the warehouse? A silver accordion? A model of the Swiss Alps? Where I live, the cargo trains rest sleepers from scenes of technicolor oceans, their cheeks bruised, their heads full of songs that make no sound, like the esoteric graffiti that covers the metro station walls. Outside, phantoms flit above the motel pool drained for the season and collecting leaves. Remember, every story has a moral. Two lovers are wrenched apart by war, then reunited at breakfast in a chalet. Or the weeping villagers cover a woman's head with a burlap sack, place the body aboard a rowboat, and set it aflame. In most arguments, both parties are at fault, so perhaps we shouldn't blame one another for the anxious zeitgeist, nor God, who one day woke to find himself transmuted into a moth. Forever the flames drift down the narrow channel toward the bay. Let us not forget to play, to skillfully escape the handcuffs of solemnity, the goopy entree everyone feels obligated to eat. I'm sick of searching for my reflection in the concrete fields behind my tenement. Better to be combusting, unbuckled and soaring, watching the sun collapse beneath the razor-thin horizon, the violet clouds stretching out from the window seat like a sea of ice. And the second poem I'll read is called The Expedition. It's not a tragedy. We knew this, but we're always forgetting. It was comforting to imagine an audience for our predicament, which somehow made the problem seem smaller, a peripheral smudge in a grand panorama observed by a solemn sentry perched on a cloud. It is tempting, sitting on a red plush seat in a rattling train compartment, watching the windowed countryside rush in and out of view, to conceive of yourself as an actress, a wind-up soldier, a prisoner on the verge of peripeteia. But this too was confusing, how we swore to ourselves we wanted to be selfless. Wasn't it always our own interests that interested us? The weeks we spent writing noble epitaphs. The way the harpists' arpeggio in the marbled concert hall drowned out the bombs driven into lobbies overseas. Perhaps we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. After all, each nascent day nudges the sun toward another superficial conclusion. We got older when we weren't looking. We woke up in a foreign city, wringing our hands. It is true that acceptance sometimes feels like standing on a shoestring strung across a gorge, but isn't the balancing act itself the game plan we've been looking for? A strategy for ignoring the subtext of afternoon? Sometimes it helps to have a reminder. Maybe you were drinking espresso with a friend in a retro cafe, discussing the implications of an ancient dialogue when suddenly the solution crystallized. The brilliance of the irony struck you again. This big project of self-making we embarked on years ago, without quite understanding what it was. Countless dress rehearsals, hours spent buttressing our mirrored egos, frantically rechecking the inventoried rations, only to learn the very thing called for was not a skyward climb, but a stripping away. Because for our purposes, the view is there to be taken in. Neon arboretums, ghost town theater marquees, dust devils, prairie squalls, and all the mountains hurtling up into pink and blue clouds. It's okay to enjoy the shifting kaleidoscope of scenery, to sit still and be quiet for a while, settling into our roles once more on this, our journey west toward the sea. Thanks again for listening. Again, those poems are from Improvisation Without Accompaniment. I hope you're all safe and well.
I'm Rick Bursky, and I'm going to read 2 poems to you from my new book, Let's Become a Ghost Story. The first poem, Ex Cathedra, which means spoken with authority, or from the seat of authority, which is, I guess, where I'm sitting right now. Ex Cathedra. What no one knows about me is that my left ear is made of rubber. The original was lost in an accident when I was 19. As Dr. Gorlick sewed it to the side of my head, he said it needed to be replaced every 11 years to appear to age along with my face. Vanity compels me to replace it every 13. A rubber ear isn't as uncommon as you think. 1 president and 2 movie stars had a rubber ear. The actors appeared together in a movie without knowing about the other's prosthesis. Each morning, I apply a lotion to the ear so the rubber doesn't discolor. Cell by cell, the body replaces itself every 7 years. It's simple science. I laid on my side as Dr. Gorlick sewed. A nurse held the ear in position. Lidocaine and something I don't remember prevented me from feeling the blood run down my neck and cheek. But I could taste it and began to spit. The nurse put gauze pads between my lips and apologized. Things like this happen all the time. Someone bleeds. Someone apologizes. The next poem is titled The Hardness. When I was 8, my sister 16 pulled up her blouse and bra and showed me her breasts, petite white balloons with pink hats, performers in an opera buffa. As the curtain rises, you can look but don't touch. It was years before I realized how perfect they were and that I had compared every breast I'd seen since to them. 11 years later, I was a soldier in uniform. A girl followed me into the men's room at the bus station in Shreveport, Louisiana. She wore a green shirt, jeans, short blonde hair, glasses too big for her face. I ignored her and washed my hands. When I turned to leave, she leaned back against the door, pulled up her blouse and bra, and showed me her breasts. For $10, you could touch them. There's a hardness to the past the future will never know. 2 days of travel wrinkled my uniform. I wanted to ask if she had done this before. Is it the past or the future that teaches us to pray? Thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll get the book. I hope you read the book. I hope you like the book. It's Let's Become a Ghost Story. See you next time.
Hi, I wrote this book, Rue, about plants historically used for birth control, about the history of science, about love, and about marriage. But to me, the most important thing this book was an experiment in radical honesty in what happens if I imagined I could really tell people the truth about the experiences of my life. And for that reason, I dedicated the book to my dear best friend, Maya Jewel Zeller. And I'd like to read for you today the poem that's most for her. It's called When We Dead Awaken, after a very important essay by Adrienne Rich. When you look at a long wave of kelp stretched out as if it were a mess of some drowned girl's hair, you won't be thinking of the functionality of the ovoid bladders like tiny buoys holding the flat, wide blades towards the sun for maximally efficient photosynthesis. You'll be thinking of that time you almost reached to hold the hand of a man as he told you that story where 2 teenagers don't fuck on the beach, but do find the corpse of a pregnant girl washed up on the sand. The wind on the bluffs of everything we didn't do felt crisp and clear, but down below on the gray beach, sand fleas would swarm you as you walked along dumps of seaweed and shore-battered crab husks. I know, because I walked the lip of it alone at the end of this. If you feel like you're in love, you have to either remember or forget that a feeling can only last a little while. What you should do with your little while, I can't say. The history of should is the history of honorable men discovering Caribbean beaches with white sand and water as blue as a mermaid's eyes, where they dragged human beings down the gangplank in chains to finance the invention of coffee shops and decorative buttons on ladies' shoes. The coast I have in mind was so ashen, and the pine trees were brown with the fire drought of the end of our present world. I should have taken his hand. I've already been a pregnant girl washed up on the shore twice. The bull kelp are so big I thought I was looking at a dead squid the first time I saw one. I asked the shoulder of him I wanted to lean my head against if he thought that was even possible. He said, "Anything is possible." You don't understand how long it was I had been dead by the night of the day Maya took me to her lake at the edge of the peninsula daggering this gray sea. It is a lake so old a glacier carved it right down to the bottom of the basalt earth. When you jump in, and you have to jump in, the cold stops your heart for a second, then it comes back in a seizure of beating that makes your vision blur. That is also a feeling that can only last so long. A boyfriend threw his dead girlfriend in Maya's lake once, and the mineral waters iced over that night. When spring came, 9 months later, the fishermen found her floating in the water as perfectly beautiful as when she went in. They call her Lady of the Lake, and she haunts the place as a ghost or a witch or a very old god who still remembers how to want and how to grasp what she wants with the ice of her hungry fist. It was night. I couldn't get the stars to hold still. I couldn't catch my breath. I was 1,000 miles outside of my life, and how long since I had felt anything? And now there was nothing I could not feel. I could see beyond the sails and red lights of the Coast Guard buoys, the flashing tentacles of 100 squid rising up to taste the silver of that strange moon before the surf hurled them in lumps at our feet. I have a dead daughter I carry like a smell of salt spray in my mind, and I have an alive daughter who is home, running with her kite straight into the wind. I have, but also do not have, the rest of you. I don't see how we can be longer than a story to each other. It's not me, it's the waves. My arms are so tired, I just need to float for a while. There was no squid. It was a rack of seaweed bulbs, their squished stems wrapping in each other, strange creatures, soft as leaf, firm as fish, forming of themselves a forest against the physics of diffusion and drift. If I had that night back, I'd do it wilder this time. Not like the silent mist of a ghost maiden, but like a red-eyed revenant who has figured out at last how to reach across the veil of breakers and grab the girl of some dying woman by the heart and make her beat until she's gasping once more. Thanks.
The disaster from Brand New Spacesuit. We can see the disaster approaching. Some are terrified, watching it, but don't know what to do. Some don't want to try to stop it because they imagine building something from what's left. But we can all see it approaching. They talk about it matter-of-factly over lunch, as if it were an expected relative or package in the mail. When the disaster gets here, they say. Or we talk about it in whispers, the way one talks about the suicide of a neighbor or a workplace affair. When the disaster gets here, they say. I'm reading that the best way to deal with stress is to picture it flowing through your body and then out into space. So I'm a stress gun pointed at the stars, a sprinkler system on overdrive. Imagining us this way, walking out into our yards if we have yards, or our streets if we have streets, shockwaves in all directions. Here is my failure when I was trying to be of help. It's all mixed in with yours, caught as we all are between impulses. Yesterday I was at the gym, on the balcony, looking out on a 30-yard square of people at their machines on repeat. And the railing was so frail, it's practically ornamental, a toy rail. Anyone at any time could fall or jump. And we're not supposed to want to fall or jump. Imagining some future above us that cares deeply, like little Jimmy Azora and his box turtle in 6th grade. You must feed your turtle and give your turtle challenges. Do we have the right outfits for this? Is this the right playlist? And there's a kind of beauty to it, watching machinery work, how the gears fit just so. You know how disasters work. Some you barely even feel.
Book release party, social distancing edition.
Confession. Each night the trains come. On the night in question, the conductor laid on the horn. I couldn't take it anymore. Took the keys from the hook, careful not to wake Hazel. I kept the headlights off in my neighborhood, where a lot of people are in my business. I know all the 24-hour stores, and I know she works the graveyard, and I know she parks in the blue spot. Her face is on the tag. I have been disobedient, but on the night in question I obeyed the conductor who said, get up, she's ready for you in the parking lot." That night I jimmied her car door and waited in the back seat. I tell my wife, "Be careful out there. It's a jungle."
Aunt Jemima. White folks say I remind them of home. I, who have been homeless all my life, except for their kitchen cabinets. I, who have made the best of everything, pancakes, batter for chicken, my life. The shelf on which I sit between the flour and cornmeal is thick with dreams. Oh, how I long for my own syrup, rich as blood, my true nephews, my nieces, my kitchen, my family, my home. I've asked people on the cream of wheat guy? You've seen those. You've seen him. He has a nice cap on. It's really cool. But I don't know his name. What is his name, And somebody told me, and I had read, his name was Rastus. I don't believe a woman named her son Rastus. But that's how I am. And this is he speaking. Sometimes at night we stroll the market aisles, Ben and Jemima and me. They walk in front, remembering this and that. I lag behind, trying to remove my chef's cap, wondering about whatever pictured me and left me personless. Rastus. I read in an old paper I was called Rastus, but no mother ever gave that to her son. Toward dawn, we returned to our shelves, our boxes, Ben and Jemima and me. We pose and smile. I simmer. What is my name?